So I can see we are a few of us. 10 o'clock, I just begin. The others will catch us when they come. Right. So yesterday we introduced I would say the unit. We also introduced maybe the topic, the introductory topic, just trying to get to grips with what economics essentially is. And just to remind ourselves, maybe as we wait for the others to join us, we said that first and foremost, we see ourselves as being a science studying human behavior. And we are concerned basically with goods that have this very, very important property of scarcity or being scarce. If you can recall that. Yeah, we saw what are the branches of economics. We saw the historical development, I believe. And we stopped at the point whereby we now are reckoning with the art versus the science of it. Okay. Yeah, we saw how do we take economics as being an art? How do we take the science of economics? So today, of course, maybe just to rehash, we also saw the modern era. I think we spent quite a bit of time because actually this is now what the modern discipline looks like essentially. But just by way of reiterating, as I said yesterday, we have all been economists, right? From when human beings simply began forming societies, forming families, fending for children, economic questions have been asked, either overtly or otherwise. And that's why I cannot emphasize enough. I really loved that, I think the third definition of economics, if you can remember, because I said it's basically the study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. Right. To the point whereby you have been given the power by society, by your family, even on your own recognizance, to make decisions. You've been an economist without knowing. I think the point being whether you've been making the best decisions or not. And actually the main purpose of this course is to equip you, hopefully, at the end of the day, in a way that you're able to make these decisions. Yesterday also we saw about the art of economic analysis, and we said basically the art is all about the simplification, if you like. There's this word we like using in academia, the abstraction. That's just a sexy way of saying the simplification of an economic reality. Why? Because as it happens, our laboratory, a biomed person has a laboratory, physical space. Tasema ndio ile laboratory yangu pale. I believe the same with a fond person. I believe the same with the fourth people. Please, if you can mute yourselves, it will be a big, big help for us. Right? But as we deal with the world as it is, that's our laboratory. So there's always a need for us to, as it were, assume or have these assumptions. And the main assumptions, as we said yesterday, we talk about assumption of rationality and the ceteris paribus assumption. And we defined assumption of rationality, if you can recall, basically that all economic agents make their economic decisions with one objective, or with one key objective, so to speak, because the objective sometimes might be more than one. And it's that aspect of optimization, right? We optimize or we maximize, right? Optimize also is here. And as I said, and as I argued yesterday, I don't have any right being here lecturing you and basically giving you maybe economic education that have been drawn over centuries, absent of this key assumption of rationality. Because if you're not rational, if you're not maximizing, then why are we here? Right? So from the sums, from the equations, from the function that we shall be doing, from the conclusions that we shall be drawing therefrom, it will always be helpful for you to have this at the back of your mind that, of course, we are doing this with these key assumptions, with these key objectives of maximization of self-interest. What do you mean by self-interest? Simply meaning that a consumer will seek to maximize his utility. A producer will seek to maximize his or her profits. Of course, we took also the second assumption, the ceteris paribus assumption, basically implying that because of the complexity of the world, because of the complexity of our laboratory, many medical scientists will always have some control over his experiments. And most sciences will always have a control. But us, even when we have those control, what we normally call control groups, we normally have to have a lot of qualifiers and a lot of riders. And that basically is informed simply because of that, the complexity within the phenomenon which we deal with. So we always have to have that assumption, key assumption as it happens, of keeping all other factors constant. And I gave you an example yesterday that in chapter 2, we shall be talking about price influencing demand of goods or services. Okay. And shall be saying something, we shall be calculating, and we shall be confidently stating that, say, a 1% change in price will lead to a certain percentage change in demand of a good or service. But how valid is that? Even if maybe if this question mark is about 5%, for example. Somebody can come and challenge you that, no, but I know that apart from price, there are these other factors. There's a price of related good. There's income, tastes and preferences, right? There's wealth. There's future expectations, for example. So he'll say, how sure are you when you tell us that a 1% change in price leads to a 5% change in demand? And you can actually confidently say that no, that result is subject to that ceteris paribus assumption that all these other factors are assumed at the point of measuring that relationship between price and demand. They are assumed to be constant, not to change. And as you can see, we have written and we are emphasizing a very key plank in the analysis of most economic phenomena. Cannot emphasize enough. You know, when you're teaching it right now, inaweza kaa ni kama mchezo ya paka na panya. But the more you do economics, the more you realize and the more you appreciate how central these two assumptions especially are. I've just given you an example of that. What percentage change in price leading to, say, 5% change in demand. And this basically puts us very, very conveniently into this third aspect of the art of economic analysis, that which we refer to as marginal analysis. And we do this quite a bit in economics, quite a bit, right? I'm reading papers because I'm now preparing my PhD work, and I normally give myself a target of reading at least 1 or 2 papers a day. And I think if over a month I've read 60 papers, I think about 50 to 55 easy will be using comfortably an aspect of marginal analysis, because at the heart of the economic questions that we ask, tangu economics ikue rafiki wa hesabu, we normally wish, or we normally like to appreciate some of these questions. When we're talking about economics being a science, and a science being about empiricism, and empiricism being all about observing and measuring, then it becomes very, very clear that marginal analysis is a very, very key part of. Actually, I have never known where to put it. Is it an art? Is it a science? Maybe a science. But I normally like to think that between the fence dividing the science and the art of economic analysis, maybe marginal analysis is basically a fence sitter in a way. Okay, because I wrote this quite a few years back, and all the time I always ask myself, as much as I wrote it as part of the art, is it really an art, or there's a way in which it can be thought about as being a science? And you can see the second point here, especially capturing that aspect of the question, or the economic question that I presented before, the price and the demand, that if we have 2 economic variables, and if we call these 2 economic variables variable X and variable Y, there's always that need in economics to measure the effect a unit change in variable X has on variable Y, and vice versa. It could also well be that a unit change in variable Y will have an effect on variable X, as long as there is what we call a cause and effect relationship. Okay. Sabu saa zingine hesabu is very interesting. Saa zingine you can run these things and you might give, or you might be encouraged wrongly that there's a relationship where the relationship is not there. So it's always very, very important for us to know, or to have that rider, that there is indeed a cause and effect relationship between the 2 variables. So whenever we have this, we end up with what we call marginal effects under the umbrella, generally, of what can be referred to as marginal analysis. Right? When the same is expressed in terms of proportion, and you'll do this quite a lot from chapter 2 or topic 2, we end up with a very, very important economic concept that we shall define, and that concept, we refer to it as elasticity, just the same way that I defined it earlier, right? The same question that you're asking when you talk about 1% change in price leading to, say, a 5% change in demand, for example. Whenever we have such questions and whenever we seek to answer such, what we end up is what we call elasticities, because we're expressing the changes proportionally. I don't know why my pen today is behaving problematically. Okay. And as I said, and I cannot emphasize enough, you'll just see maybe by the end of the course how important these elasticities are in the reckoning of economic concepts. So when we talk about the science, and I'll just mention, and don't worry if I mention, because it's just a case of whereby we will basically be dwelling on this. Because even yesterday when I was introducing the course, I told you that we'll be doing theories from chapter 2. In those theories, we'll be doing modeling. We'll be talking about things like production function. Okay. When we shall be talking about demand functions. And any other such functions that we shall be getting. What we used to call equations actually in mathematics. At a higher level, we are more comfortable talking about functions. We shall be meeting this later. And these are the sciences, because basically they capture that need to observe, that need to measure. In other words, the empirical aspects of the course, empiricism. Right? And of course, we use the theories and models to predict or to forecast. One of you asked me whether at the end of the day we predict. And the short answer that I gave yesterday, yeah, we are rightly in the business of predictions. We are rightly in the business of forecasting. Right now you can see na hizi shida ambazo ziko kila mahali. Hata Ruto wameingia na maybe they didn't have information when they are campaigning. But right now you can see them really talking about maybe Kenya having 93 million shillings. Uongo mingi tu, lakini hii ni siasa. Anything goes. Because when I heard that, I just laughed and nikasema, by the time you even come up with one point of information in economics, the kind of research that will have gone to actually calculating that is quite a lot. So normally be very cynical or be very skeptical when you hear some of these numbers being carelessly bandied around, because for us, of course, we'll ask ourselves many questions. When did they calculate? Na kama unanipatia ya siku ambayo Uhuru alitoka, what about a week before? What about a month before? What about 2 months before? We start asking such questions, and sometimes you realize that it's just what Mother Koome called hot air at the end of the day. And sometimes I am encouraged, even the way maybe even the so-called common person will actually even unpack some of this information, because somebody asked a very important question. If it's 93 million, how did we get money for the entourage that accompanied President Ruto to UK and what and to UNGA in New York? And sometimes this question are asked very, very simply, but for us as economists, we become very happy, because we are like, at least that's a person that, as much as he has not put it in an economic way, but he is seeking an economic answer to an economic reality at the end of the day, right? So sisemi ya kuwa the other regime didn't pora, pengine hata walipora maybe zaidi ya hii, but the point being that sometimes when you hear statistics being bandied around, you have to be very skeptical to an extent of you asking further questions at the end of the day. Okay, so what will be the GDP next year? We can actually predict on the basis of the GDP that we'll have calculated maybe say last year. That ukiangalia the trend, the way our GDP has been growing, we can be reasonably sure of the GDP, even for this year, even for next year, as the case may be. So that's the science, that's the art of economic analysis at the end of the day. How do we conduct our research? Right? Further in the theme of analysis, right? We conduct our research by asking, firstly, questions that are deemed to be positivistic or positive questions. And after asking these positive questions, we now get to the point whereby we argue about normative questions. So we divide this into two. And even right now, I can assure you that as I compile my thesis, I first start by understanding the ground. Nasikia mnasemanga kwa ground. Kwa ground nini inafanyika? Kwa ground vitu ni different. So you have that saying in Sheng. And actually, that's actually a similar to this thing, because you have to understand how the ground is. Before you say, okay, the ground is like this, I think we can better it, or we can leave it the way it is, or we can even make it worse, because it is the part of man that sometimes it's not healthy for us to assume that we can only make it better every time. We will always hope that we can make it better, but sometimes wengine wako na ushetani wa ku make it worse, and that's the reality of it. So let's discuss these two in turn, beginning, of course, with the positive, understanding how the ground is. And positivistic questions or positivistic research issues will basically attempt to understand the behavior. You can see there's some bad English here. Normally nowadays, I just like correcting in class, because time was when I used to say, wacha nitacollect later, and then I find me forgetting, and then the next year I see the same issues happening. Okay. We attempt to understand this economic phenomena, economic behavior, economic issues, operation of economic systems, without the ascribing or the ascription of judgment, or without judging. So here we are honest to the Christian dictum that do not judge or you shall be judged, when you're being positivistic. Okay. Describing the phenomena as it is, or as they are. What exists, how they work. Asking the what is question. All my people like saying what is. So this is not really my people, but basically a question of basically asking the what is, just basically understanding or describing the phenomena as it is. It is a house. How many stories does it have? What kind of roof does it have? Does it have gutters? How big are the rooms? How big is the dining hall? How big is this kitchen? How well made is the kitchen? These are questions that actually yield facts as they are. Okay? Positivistic questions yield facts as they are. So that if you are two people, and if you look at the same thing or the same house, the expectation will be that you would basically end up having the same conclusions on the same. Okay. And let's just see some of these questions, what they are. And you can see the factual nature of these questions. What is Kenya's GDP? I'll go to Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, yank it out, and I'll tell you maybe for last year, our GDP was this much. What is the average income level in Kenya? I'll go to the Ministry of Treasury, and maybe they have a document capturing this, or even maybe the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. We used to have a government called Jubilee, sadly no longer there. So maybe I should change this to UDA. Let me even change it as we speak, because I've had this for the last many years as it happens. Okay, what is UDA's economic policy? We'll go to their manifesto and say, tulipatiwa Hustlers Fund, tuliambiwa mama mboga itakuwa hivi, tuliambiwa within 100 days kutakuwa hivi. So we can wait, we can say, huyu mtu tulimuingisha on September 15th, maybe 100 days is January 1st or something, or December, I believe, Christmas. Then after Christmas, we can say, did you achieve whatever you wanted to achieve within the first 100 days or something? Okay. Facts as they are. Is Kenya food secure? Yes or not? And there are some measurements that we can actually have, agreed measurements that can actually make us conclude this question either way. So you can see the key attribute we are being, we are not stating the goodness or otherwise of this phenomenon. You are just appreciating the phenomenon as is. As opposed to normative questions, as we'll shortly see. And whereby here, we'll be ascribing or attaching these value judgments. Shall be saying the situation as it is either is good, situation is bad, the situation can be bettered. I don't know why. Okay. So it looks at the outcome of the behavior, phenomena, set of economic system, and we ask the further question, yes, this house has 2 rooms. Are those 2 rooms enough? Maybe I have a family of 10 kids and maybe 4 wives, right? So will that house be enough for my family? Right? Maybe it has an iron roof, but I needed a tiled roof. Okay. So you ask the further question whether the outcome or the reality as it happens is satisfactory at that point in time. Asking the what ought to be. Remember, the other one was the what is question. Here we'll be asking the what ought to be. A very, very important part of a branch of economics, because at the end of the day in economics, it's all about policy development, policy formulation. So it helps us in coming up with appropriate, optimal policies. And actually there's a whole sub-branch in economics that we refer to as policy economics. And in policy, you have to throw your hat to the ring and you say, yes, I think the situation can be bettered. I have a 2-bedroom house. I have 10 kids. I have 4 wives. That house is not enough for me. I need a bigger house. Okay. So either nifanye kazi, I get that bigger house, or nikae na shida zangu. Lakini that's not the ideal as it is right now. And we'll be very, very clear on that. Okay. What policies should the government employ to guarantee optimal GDP, GNP? Should the government concentrate on policies targeted at higher income levels? Should MPs pay taxes? How can Kenya guarantee food security? Should the government still issue laptops to third-world people? So you can see now we are actually going further. We will have appreciated the situation as it is, and we are saying if we do 1, 2, 3, the situation will be better than what it is currently. So you can see the oughtness, the ought to be being represented by the word should everywhere in this question. Okay. Don't see these things as being different, the two. They're essentially two sides of the same coin, because you cannot do the normative without asking the positive first. Right? And in the house example, you see, if I have 4 wives, I have 10 kids. It's a question of me actually going and seeing that house from the point of me saying that house is not appropriate for my family. I must go and see and appreciate the fact as it is. If it was a 10-bedroom house, a bigger house, I would say that house is okay, because I will have gone and seen it. But because it's a 2-bedroomed house, I have 10 kids, 4 wives, say, not appropriate. Okay. So they are basically questions that are basically, they're like twins, these two sides of economics. You cannot ask the normative without appreciating the positive, mostly. Most times. So don't look at them as being very different. Any questions so far? Before I now get to the very important part and very exciting part of what I deem economics to be. If you have a question, please raise your hand. You can always put it in chat. If you are not of a mind to speak, and I'll always from time to time check and time allowing answer your question. Any questions? I'm checking the participants. No questions. I don't know whether it is a good thing or a very good thing, but let me hope that it's a case of whereby you are understanding of everything that has so far been taught. Now we are getting to the essence of what economics is, of what economics should be. Okay. Disciplines arise out of the need to solve societal problems. And economics is not any different. So the fact that we are meeting at 10 today, Tuesday, we met yesterday at 2, we'll be meeting at those times for the duration of this semester. Hopefully be imparting some economics in you is because of the reality of why economics exists or must exist or should exist. Let me not be so arrogant as a discipline. Because it's the reality that we have this thing that we call the central economic problem. And what is the central economic problem? In a word, is that reality. And I mentioned this yesterday. We deal with the resources that have that property of being scarce. Whether you're a food nutritionist, right? Fund people, I believe you deal with nutrients, both micro and macro. I don't know why my pen today is problematic. Just try to see whether it's a case of it needing a charge. It's not writing as happily as I'm used to it writing. It's a pen that costed quite a bit of money, so see whether it's a charging issue. Right? You deal with nutrients. I don't believe it's a charging issue. Whether you're talking about biomed, I think in biomed you deal with a lot of things, maybe even reagents and all that. Maybe you'll educate me at some point. Okay. Whether it is forced, at first I know you deal with almost like fond, but now maybe on the animal side, whereby you deal also with the nutrients. I'm very, very sure. I don't know about these things, and you can see maybe I suspect my ignorance has come through very successfully in me trying to have an idea of what you people deal with. But I have no shred of doubt in my mind that whatever you are dealing with, right, will have that aspect of scarcity. And that's actually what is informing you being in this class for one reason or another. So what is scarcity? What is choice? And how do we measure them at the end of the day? We normally have economic systems. For the last 100 or so years, they have been divided into two. We have, if you go to the last bit of your resource book, you'll have something called Soko Huria, or free market. And you'll have the other one, which is, I don't know, the socialism or something. It starts with C. I forget about it right now, or something. Whichever the economic system, 3 questions must be asked and successfully answered. What do we produce? Who will produce it? And after it being produced, who gets it? And these questions are asked because of one reason and one reason alone, that the resources or inputs used for production are by their very nature scarce resources. And these questions actually just come in simply because of that reality. If you remember yesterday, I gave you the example of air. You'll never hear people fight about air. It's rarely even in the discussion. Mali, unaona, even your enemy is willing to let you have that. It basically means that he doesn't think that sorry, I seem to have gone off for a second. So as I was saying, when you're talking about ubiquitous goods, if you remember yesterday, they said the opposite of scarce goods is ubiquitous goods. And we said, and we argued, that rarely will you hear people fighting about this common air. Because it's one of the few goods in the world that has a non-scarce property. At least by as of 2022. I don't know about years down the line. You will hear about people saying there'll be war about water. There'll be war about oil. There'll be war about this and that. Rarely shall you hear people talking about, people fighting about goods that are in plenty or goods that are everywhere, like air, for example. So in economics, we limit ourselves to goods that have this scarce nature. Actually, and we are so committed to it that such goods are referred to as economic goods. So whenever you hear people talk about that, am I still breaking Amos? You can confirm whether I'm breaking. Notice Gishuki is saying I'm breaking, and yet, hello, am I still breaking? Hello? Yeah, I think Amos has reassured me that I'm good now. It's just these technologies. I'm using fiber and they're normally very, very reliable, but once in a while, I believe, they drop the ball. But just engage me anyway, whenever you hear the quality going down. I can always change between Safaricom and fiber, although Safaricom also nowadays, they let us down. I warn people, hii maneno ya kupatia wa Kenya, some of these positions is not very informed. And I was laughed at some time back. Kenyans, we have a way of doing. I don't know what's happening. I can see there's quite a bit of this dropping. If it drops again, I'll just change the provider. Still unstable. So what is scarcity? Scarcity simply means that some sort of a dilemma exists, right? What Englishmen call conundrum. Between our wants, which are limitless, and the resources that are required to actualize these wants. Okay. So there's some dilemma, some conundrum, some deficit, so to speak, between our wants, infinite wants, versus finite resources. If I were to ask you, where do you want to live in Nakuru? Nobody will tell me Kaptembwa, or very few of you. The honest, I will be surprised anyway, if any of you were to say Kaptembwa. In the context of Nairobi, Runda. or Mukuru Kayafa. All of us will wish to be packed in Runda or Karen of this world, which actually is Europe. If you go there, sometimes you'll think you are not even in Kenya. But the reality simply is that there is no enough resources to make us all live in Karen or Runda. So our wants normally will be infinite. We want the best. All of us want Mercedes. All men want the most beautiful girl. All beautiful girls want the hunkiest men around. Question becomes, are there enough beautiful girls to go around? And vice versa, are there enough hunkiest men to go around? Ama ni ile nasikianga siku hizi mnasemanga ni sisi tuko. So, sometimes we see these things, and this is actually one of the things that tells you, whether you know it or not, you are an economist, because when you say ni sisi tuko, you are actually acknowledging this maybe sad reality that because of scarcity, you may not have that beautiful girl you've been eyeing, or that beautiful guy you've been eyeing if you are a lady. Our wants are infinite, they are limitless, but the reality is that the resources meant to actualize this world wants are finite. They are limited. So what happens is that we are forced to choose. Very, very important. We are forced to choose amongst competing resource uses and amongst alternative final distribution of what is produced amongst economic agents. So in a nutshell, the central economic problem, if somebody were to hold a gun to your head and ask you what the central economic problem is a question of scarcity leading to choice. That's the central economic problem. Tunaweza hata achia hapo, we go home. And yet we must be curious. So let's continue. We must be more curious than that. So let's continue. Look at a simple tree. So I warned you I'm not the best artist around. But I believe that's a rough representation of a tree. And if you think about the uses of a tree, if you have a tree in your compound, you can use it for various ways. Ash shade, right? You can decide to make even a kifagio with some of the branches. You can decide you are broke enough, and then you are like, let me fell this tree and use it for charcoal or for firewood. You can decide to make timber or just sell it the way it is. So you can see that a tree as an important resource, and I'm using a tree because all of us, I believe, we know what a tree is. It has many uses. And sometimes because it is a resource and because it's an economic good, which means it is scarce, it will be very, very clear to us, very, very presently, that if you choose to use it for charcoal, you cannot use it for shade. And also vice versa, that if you choose to use it for shade, you'll not be able to use it for charcoal or firewood or timber. And this is basically what we mean when we talk about competing uses, right? And you can see that I have even taken the trouble to highlight that aspect of the uses, the competing uses. Competing uses simply means that you use it for one function, you cannot use it for the other function, and vice versa. So the question inevitably will rear its head, will be, what's the best use of this tree? Okay. What's the best use of this tree? Should I use it for shade? Kifagio, charcoal, firewood, timber, should I just sell it the way it is? And you'll find that even in your discipline, you ask yourself this question. I have reagent 1, if I'm a biomedical student. Maybe I don't have enough money for the other reagent. So do I postpone the experiment until I have enough money, or do I split it 50-50? Maybe half an experiment is better than no experiment. As a fond person, you have to ask yourself that when you advise somebody to take maybe 1,800 calories, does he have enough money to guarantee that he'll be able to take that 1,800 calories per day? And even if he has that money, maybe he has just enough money to maybe buy cheaper alternatives of the food. So inevitably, you have to reckon with problems that are economic in nature. And that's why you are here. In other words, I told you, I'm really trying to dissuade you from the thought that I used to have when I was in where you were seated those many years ago, where I could ask myself, na hii kitu itanisaidia wapi kwa maisha? I'm desperate basically to prove to you that even once you even get from this class, you should be able to actually even just start to appreciate some aspect of it in your field of work. So scarcity and choice simply is an economic problems. And the reality is that we have to do what we call trade-offs. And you can see some of the questions that I've asked, I've posed for you. If you remember, for a biomedical scientist, maybe reagents, you're actually making a trade-off or trying to solve some trade-off problems. Trade-offs basically exist simply because most economic goods have 2 or more uses that are competing. Kama hiyo mti ambayo tumesema ya kuwa, if you use it for shade, cannot use it for timber. If you use it for timber, it means you have to cut it. So the tree will no longer be available for what? For shade or for its ornamental value. Because sometimes pia tunataka tu kuadmire taswira ambayo hiyo mti unapendezea. So trade-offs simply imply that if we have 2 competing goods, if we call this competing goods, good X1 and good X2, you can only have more of one, say X1, at the expense of the other. You can only have more of good X1 if and only if you are prepared to give up at least a certain amount of good X2. And the converse argument also being true, that if you want more of good X2, you can only have it at the expense of the amount of good X1 that you must be prepared to give up. And you'll find trade-offs being a common theme throughout this course. And we will shortly be doing production possibility frontier, and this aspect of trade-offs will basically be coming out very, very clearly. We'll also do things like isoquants and indifference curves some time down the line. And you'll actually see this concept of trade-off. So I was thinking that maybe for me, it is too obvious. I don't really pronounce it, but actually it will become very, very clear that scarce nature of good. Mi saizi nikitaka kupumua nichukue hata hewa yote in my compound right now. Kuna mtu ataniuliza. Hata nyinyi hamtaniuliza. You'll just be curious whether that is possible. But you'll be like, you are not really affecting the air that I'm taking. So, jibambe. But with these other things, at least a debate will be had at the end of the day. So how do we measure? How do we say that if, say, I have a tree, right? And I say maybe I have two competing uses, timber versus maybe it's ornamental value, niache tu ya mandhari. How do we decide timber is better as opposed to ornamental value? Or how do we decide ornamental value is better than timber? I want to introduce you to a concept that I normally huwa narai wanafunzi wangu tangu nianze kuifunza in 09. If you forget anything else in economics, if you forget anything else in this course, don't forget about opportunity cost. Because it's actually the key. It's actually the key differentiator between us and even our sister discipline. That's how central it is. And the bottom line, it is opportunity cost that actually enables us to make economic decisions. Most, if not all, economic decisions are made with this concept at the back of our minds. So what is opportunity cost? Very, very key. But being very, very key, it is defined almost disappointingly, in my view, by only 4 words. You know, sometimes you really expect that this important concept to be having a lot of jargons and a lot of definition. But opportunity cost almost disappointingly is defined by 4 words. The next best choice that you sacrifice. The next best choice that you forgo the use of. And even before I get even into these other explanations, if we take this example of the tree, whether to use timber versus leave it for its ornamental value, in an ideal world, you'd wish that we can use it for both. That's the ideal world. That's the non-scarce world. Okay. You can use it for timber. You can use it for ornamental value. Unaweza kuikata na unaweza kuiacha kwa mandhari yake. We don't live in an ideal world. So the decision has to be taken. And that decision will be, right? The question that we'll basically want to form is that what is the choice with the lowest opportunity cost? And that's the question, however complicated the maths are, however simple the maths are, that is actually the only relevant economic questions in most economic arena. What is that choice with the lowest opportunity cost? So that if maybe the value of this tree for timber in terms of opportunity costs I'm looking for the tree, yes, was say, let's just give it an arbitrary number, 30,000 shillings. And if the cost of having it as an ornamental value will be, say, 50,000. These are just arbitrary numbers, my dear ladies and gentlemen. A rational economist will take the decision having the lowest opportunity cost, and that decision, as you can see here, will be to cut the tree down for timber. Because to leave it for its ornamental value will be costing you more, 50,000. And yet to have it for timber will only be costing you 30,000. So siwezi sema ya kuwa kuna hesabu nimefanya na kuna miujiza ambayo imetendeka. These are just arbitrary numbers, arbitrary values, basically giving us that decision from a rational economic viewpoint. Let's unpack this concept further of opportunity costs. Right? Time chosen for study implies you have to give up time for leisure. I can see you're only about how many today? So today you have not even struck even, actually you're even becoming less. Our high point was about 46, you're only now 36, which means that maybe I'm becoming more boring, I don't know. Yesterday, I think at some point you had a high of, I think about 60 something students. What am I trying to say? I think at some point you decide, some of you decide, assuming that it's not a question of the internet, some of you will just decide that no, I'm better off spending these next few minutes pursuing some leisure activity. So which means that the cost becomes, you're not able to attend the class. The vice versa of it will be that even for you, 36 of you who are patiently listening to me, are you incurring some opportunity cost? Short answer, yes. And what is this opportunity cost? You'll maybe be having your breakfast. You'll maybe be reading. You'll maybe be talking to your friend, girlfriend, boyfriend, right? But for one reason or another, you've chosen to at least engage with this lesson. And that takes us to a very, very important reality in economics, that even the best decisions will inevitably have an opportunity cost attached to them, however good they are. Okay. Alphonse Moturi, I'll be with you. Right? Time spent pursuing university education. A good decision. Nimeenda university. Unasomea nini? Nasomea biomed. Nasomea food science. Nasomea food nutrition and dietetics. And your people will be proud. Kijana wangu yuko university. Au msichana wangu yuko university. But the reality, I hope I'm not depressing some of you, that there are some other arguably important choices that by dint of you going to the university or being in the university, you will be forced to sacrifice. You'll be forced to forgo. You would have been making some money, maybe nunua matatu, kuwa makanga, tuende. Ama kuwa driver wake, right? Doing some business somewhere. Enriching yourself in other ways other than university education. But you will have made the decision, whether it is a wise decision or not, that for the next 4 years, let me pursue university education. That becomes an opportunity cost. to you. Right? When you talk about budgeting also, and one person that I don't really envy sometimes is the Minister of Finance of any country. Sababu huyu ni mtu, I believe, every day in his office. And if you remember, if you can imagine a country like Kenya, whereby you not only have the central government, but also you have 47 county governments. All of them, hakuna wakati utawapatia pesa waseme imetosha. Okay, so how do you allocate the budget at the end of the day? It becomes very, very a game of actually reckoning with the opportunity costs argument. Because if you can think about a budget as a cake, and yesterday it was actually proven that I don't know how to draw cakes, but you'll just humor me that even what I'm drawing here is just a cake. And if that's a budget, na unajua budget ni, nakata keki mara mingi na unapatiana. So tukisema hii ni education, for example, part of education, na hii ikuwe military. So let's do it like that. Na hii education tuiweke hivi. Mtu akisema ya kuwa niongezee hapo education haijatosha, it means that actually you'll have to go, for example, kwa military, and you slash the budget, at least by some amount, in order to have more for education. We saw actually yesterday, is it yesterday or yesterday, but one route of lugging some trucks to the drought-stricken regions in Kenya, or counties. And it was very, very clear, and actually spoke like an economist. Akasema, no, we'll have to slash the budget from ministry so that you can have money for this exercise, because it was not planned. Nobody had reckoned that there'll be a drought this time. That becomes an opportunity cost of some sort. Okay. So the opportunity cost for shillings allocated for defense, for example, is the next best alternative used for the same shilling, which could have been allocated to build more schools, construct more dams in the arid and semi-arid lands. I wrote this example, I believe, more than 10 years ago. And it was at a point whereby we had just gone to Somalia, the KDF. And you know, between 1966 and 2011, no bullet had been fired in anger anywhere in Kenya. 45 years. We went without any KDF person firing a gun at somebody, at an enemy. Maybe wanaweza kuwa alijiua huko kwa camps hatujui, lakini kwa adui, I don't think that had happened. 45 years. So inevitably a question arose that why do we need to commit so much of our budget to defense when there are other arguably pressing sectors in our economy that we needed attended to? Education, more schools; agriculture, more dams. Okay, and you can see even 10 years after devolution, we are still asking the same questions at the end of the day. Okay. So let me answer Alphonse's question. And Alphonse, I think I want to identify you even at this very, very early juncture as being a very, as students, actually, who best captures the ethos of this class in terms of participating and interacting. So I want to commend you for that. And now I can say I have a few questions before we now go to the example. Nyoike asks, how has the war in Ukraine affected the prices of commodities and more specifically the food prices? I'll answer this in chapter 2. This question is perfect for chapter 2 or for topic 2, which we shall be beginning next week. So hold your horses, Nyoike. And if I will not have answered it next week, please accuse me of something next week. But bottom line, we know that the relationship between price and demand is inverse, right? So if there is less demand, price and demand, when price increases, demand decreases. When demand decreases, when price decreases, demand increases. And what has happened with Ukraine is simply that because there has been a kind of a reduction in supply, how demand and supply work, maybe if this framework will basically capture it better. Let me see. There's a framework that I gave you yesterday, and that is what we shall be doing in chapter 2. We have the supply curve there. And we have what we call the supply curve, which basically captures the relationship between price and the supply of goods, and it's normally positive, meaning increase in price, more is supplied. And you have the demand curve here, which basically captures the inverse relationship between price and demand, that when demand increases, when price decreases, demand increases, and vice versa. So what will have happened in Ukraine is that actually, Ukraine is the world bread basket. They are the main suppliers of wheat and fertilizer. Okay. So because there was a reduction in supply of these two very critical goods or service, what that will have actually increased the demand relatively. And when demand increases, price also increases, right? I don't know whether that makes sense, but if it doesn't make sense, I think I'll hopefully make it make sense better once you'll have been equipped with some tools in chapter 2. But ceteris paribus, holding all other factors constant, whenever there is an increase in demand of good, when it is the demand that is actually causing the change in factors, one of the changes will be that the price of the good will be seen to increase. And that is what has happened with respect to wheat, fertilizer, and also oil, because Russia is also one of the big distributors of oil. And what Russia has just decided is that we shall not supply oil because you people are not supporting us. So we shall not supply you with oil. So the prices are basically coming up, and actually even the inflation that we are experiencing is simply because of this reality. We are talking about one of the major producers of critical goods in the world, wheat, fertilizer, oil. And simply because there is depressed supply for them, meaning that actually the demand relatively has gone up, and with the increase in demand, the price also will be increasing for these goods and services. Okay, so you have taken us off track kidogo, but sometimes it's also important for us to delve into this. Infinix Smart 6 is asking, can you define opportunity cost as the value of foregone alternative? Yes, and I told you economics is like Anglicanism yesterday. The beauty of Anglicanism is you don't need to stick to one way of doing things like Catholics. And I'm a Catholic. I'm talking as a person who was raised Catholic. So I know the difference between these two religions. As long as you have captured the essence of a definition, you'll always, from your point of view, maybe get your full marks, but more critically in the future, you'll always be making sense at the end of the day. Okay, so potato, potato, same thing. So is the definition of opportunity cost perfect, or I don't know what you mean by this, Alphonse. So maybe you'll need to recalibrate that question. I simply don't understand it. Kabisa. So is the definition of opportunity cost perfect, or I don't know. What do you mean by a perfect definition? There is very little perfection in the world. So let me advise you as a Mubaba. There is very little perfection. So hata kwa economics, kama ni our definition as economists ndio hatujawahi kubaliana. What hope do we have of actually successfully defining all these other things? Ladies and gentlemen, the short answer to you is there's no perfect definition, but this is actually a definition that is normally given all through the world. Hata ukisoma vitabu, hiyo ndio utaona. And you can see I've actually endeavored to use even different words than that, because at the end of the day, it's all about making sense. It's all about communicating at the end of the day what it is you mean. I don't know whether it's perfect, Alphonse. We can have this debate all day, and I'll not tell you whether it's perfect. It's upon you to determine how perfect is it for you or not. Me personally, I'll go to a book, I'll pull up a definition, the one I was taught 25 years ago, and give you. Or even the one that I've pulled out, if there is an update, and I'll give you and I'll tell you, maybe this is how I understand it. So I don't know how to answer that question, Alphonse. You want me to answer it? I don't think I'll answer, because what I know in life is that there is very little perfection, if any, in this life of ours. Why do the government have to slash money from some ministry yet it has contingency funds? No, it's a cake, Philip Kimani. A cake, kama umetengeneza keki ya size fulani ni hiyo cake. The only way you can actually have more is by baking a bigger cake. Na tunajua sisi rasilimali ambayo tuko nayo, it can only make a certain amount of cake. So wakati maybe kumetokea changamoto in one sector, it has to be. I don't know why Sheila is requesting remote control of my screen. I have declined. You people, you are doing things I have never seen being done for the last 3 years. So there is not, even that contingency funds in the amount, it's not infinite. Right? And does it have contingency funds? If you cannot even fund our budget, do we really have these contingency funds we talk about? I don't think so. I think you mean this other fund, Sidani. I don't think you need, but you see, the reality is that actually we don't even fully budget most of our expenses year on year. If you go to the ministry, and I know because I've worked even at a certain level with the parastatal called Egerton, I know sometimes mnaambiwa tu on paper ya kuwa hiyo department yenu mko na shilingi milioni 5. But now the stress now becomes how to access that money, because sometimes during the years, some more important work comes in and your money has to be used. And when you go to request for it, you'll be told, ngojeni ama. If you get somebody who is more honest, they'll tell you, you have already used it. What will you do? So the short answer, I don't think sometimes they have this contingency fund in the amount that we might believe they do. But we have an indisciplined government in a way, so sometimes we don't maybe do the best in terms of the use of this money. And of course, you have to include the aspect of corruption in Kenya, which is very significant. You are told 2 billion get lost a day. Kenyatta mwenyewe alikiri na kinywa chake. So this money has to come from somewhere. That's why I am almost sure that this contingency fund maybe are just theoretical concepts. Maybe ni vitu tu zinawekwa tu ziko, lakini when it now comes to getting the money, zinakuwa haziko. So I hope I have answered you people. Alphonse, there is no perfection. Please just take the divisionals and this and try to understand it Kama kuna shida, you can always engage me. So let's do an example of this, and then maybe we can call it a day. I believe, no, I still have 30 minutes. Good. You can still ask questions. You can still ask questions so that we can, maybe when we're remaining with about 5 minutes, I can quickly prosecute them. So you might be presented a problem, as you can have it there. Maybe I'll just give you a few minutes for you to read it or to write it or to understand it. But there's a table there showing the choices available for a certain student. I think when I wrote this, I was teaching these 2 courses and not Econ 100. But you can imagine that also that can equally apply to you as an Econ 100 student. So it's a table showing the choices available to a student and the rewards associated with each choice of spending the next 4 years in the university. Because I told you that even as good as it is, and maybe I can even further qualify good, because what might be good for me might not be good for you. But there is always a opportunity cost attached to even these good choices. And by good, I mean it in quotes, because good in most cases is a subjective term. So you have choices available to a student and the rewards associated with each choice. When I was making this question, I was imagining that there is a sponsor you have. Now, the problem is that even you people, you spoil the word sponsor. So I'm not talking about the Mubabas, but I'm talking about just a person with a good heart coming in and saying, right, if you take this choice, I'll give you this money. If you make this other choice, this is the money I'll give you. So I want us to calculate the opportunity cost associated with each choice. So you are given those 4 choices and their rewards. Stay in the university, I'll give you 2.26. Instead of going to the university, you marry, I'll give you 1.07. Instead of going to the university, go do business, 2.7. And lastly, if you choose to do nothing, if you choose not to marry, if you choose not to go business, if you choose not to go to the university, I'll give you 2.24. So the question becomes, which choice will you take and why? Which choice will you take out of the 4 and why? I wish to, and tunapungua, sijui ni pesa inaisha ama ni nini? Right? Amos Rambeka is saying business. Who else? If you can unmute and give me a response, just raise your hand. I want to pick 5 people. Alphonse Moturi, what will you take? Unmute and give me a response and why. I talked about him and yes,
I'll take business.
Why?
Because business will bring profits. So
business will bring profit.
Yes, and I just don't want to sit down and do nothing.
Sawa. Thank you.
Yes.
Vincent George, unmute.
Yes,
How are you? Which one will you take?
I'll take business
Why?
because if I try to check across the table, I see business will give me much money. I'll earn a lot
You learn a
compared to
lot.
other categories. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Douglas Maina. Unmute.
University.
University. Why university?
I'm taking university.
Why?
University.
Why? Neke.
I'm taking, yeah.
Why university?
Considering that taking the business.
You are getting lost.
Taking the business now.
So mine I will
taking
go
the
for
business now considers
okay. So mine I will go for university. Who else? Two more ladies. You know, tulisema maneno ya agenda ni muhimu, and yet when we give ladies opportunity, I don't see them participating. Let me go to the chat. Ted Bakari, Walter, and everyone now wamesema nothing. So nothing has one vote. I don't fancy myself as Chebukati, but let me do this work. Norris Gishuri says Mare. Joylin Chepkoech says Mare. Who else? Arnold, business. I hope we don't have repeat voters. You know, in Kenya, hapo corruption munaingishanga mpaka hata mahali haitakikani. Technopop, university. Amos nadhani tulikuwa tumechukua yako. Let me just do 2 or 3 and then I'll give you my views and the reasons to why. And of course, my views will be predicated on pure economics. I think the winner is obvious. Anyway, hata kabla sijachukua wengine. The winner here is, of course, business. And I believe most of you, I am not comfortable with the reasons, but sometimes I'll maybe agree with the choices, but not the reasons. Because imagine that, I mean, the most important thing in economics is this, rationality. And if you remember rationality, we said you are seeking to maximize a certain self-interest. And from an opportunity cost point of view, rationality simply means you take the choice with the lowest. Opportunity cost. And what is that choice? That is what I want us to determine. For those who said it is business, I'll agree with you. But I suspect that you took business simply because it's the one with the highest reward. But I shall, as I shall shortly show, the most important thing is not so much the one with the highest reward, but the choice having the lowest opportunity cost. Remember how we define opportunity cost? The next best alternative or choice, sacrificed or forgone. If you forgo something, you are sacrificing it. You are unasema, in the greater schemes of things, I think I can sacrifice this. So the way that we do it in economics is this way. If we describe opportunity cost as the next best alternative, that is forgone, you have to ask yourself that if I go to the university, I'll get 2.2. Na hiyo napatiwa. But how much am I forgoing? What is my opportunity cost? It will be clear that if you go to the university, because you can only be given 2.4, utapatiwa hii 2.2 na 2.7, utapatiwa tu moja yazo. Because even money, as it happens, is a scarce resource, is an economic good. So you'll be given 2.2, but you'll be foregoing 2.7. So you'll be losing, out of that choice, 449,598. This one you can do in your free time. And that's the real opportunity cost that you shall be foregoing. If you choose to marry, you are being given 1.07. But the next best alternative that you are foregoing, you are sacrificing, is the highest reward, which is still business, which is 2.7. If you choose to do business, you are given 2.7. But even that, as much as it has the highest payoff, it is still subject to some opportunity cost. And what is the next best alternative out from business? It is this one for the university. Okay? And if you choose to do nothing, you'll be given 2.24 million. But under that rider, that opportunity cost is the next best alternative that you sacrifice, you'll be foregoing 2.7 also. So once you draw this column, it becomes very, very clear that a rational person, right? A rational economist, if such person should exist, will choose or will make that choice with the lowest opportunity cost. And that choice, it becomes very, very clear is that. Because for university, 2.7. Marry, 2.7. Nothing, 2.7. But for business, you are taking that 2.7 and you are only foregoing 2.26. So because that is the choice having the lowest opportunity cost, it becomes what we call the best choice. And if you are rational, if you're an economist who is rational, that is the choice to make. So I was happy that most of you concluded that, but I guess you concluded it because it had the highest payoff. But from an economic point of view, we're actually more concerned with that choice having the least or the lowest opportunity cost. And that's actually how most, if you hear economic decisions or economic what, if you hear even what they call economic feasibility of projects, mahesabu zinaweza kuwa mingi, but when it now comes to the conclusion is made as simply as what I have just done. Okay. This last column here, what I've just done is to basically give you the real opportunity cost, because when you talk about university, the difference between the reward and the opportunity cost basically will be representing basically the what? The amount, the real amount which you are foregoing, right? If all of them went for business, they will have gotten 2.7, right? But when you talk about the real opportunity cost here, it basically is the difference between this column and this one. Okay. How this assists us from an economics point of view is that you'll see that with the university, there's an amount you are losing, 449,000. Marrying, you're losing 1.6, the difference between 2.7 and 1.07. right? For nothing, you're still losing something. But here, because it has a sign different from the others, one can actually argue that you are not losing, you're actually gaining, or actually you're not losing anything. So also that's another way of us determining the best choice, because you can see here it's positive value, but this now becomes a negative value. So I don't know whether it's stuck with you, because it's very, very important for you to understand and appreciate this this concept. It might appear simple, it might appear not so simple, but I can assure you that most, if you hear technical feasibility, you'll always hear financial feasibility, you'll always hear economic feasibility whenever projects are being rolled out. Hata hizi infrastructure zote kama SGR, kama ile expressway ya Nairobi. Of course, now the problem with us Africans, we introduce self-interest and corruption in it. But if it was to be done purely from a pure intellectual exercise, then this is basically how it is done, for us to determine that maybe we need a hospital more than an expressway, or we need an airport more than a road or something like that. And this is basically why this concept of opportunity cost becomes very, very important at the end of the day. At the end of the day, I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. I cannot. Any questions? Any questions? Do I have a question? Vincent wants me to pardon the explanation of the table. Ask a specific question, Vincent, and I'll answer. I can assure you, in a teaching perspective, there's nothing we fear other than having to repeat ourselves. And I know you people, you're university students, so I trust that you come with some core competencies, which basically means you are at least, hata kama hujalewa kile kitu utasema, what about sijaelewa up to this much? So just ask it, re-ask it, and then I can see. I think I still have 10 minutes. Infinix Hot 10-1, unmute and ask your question. Infinix Hot 10-1, 10i, unmute. For the last time, Infinix Hot 10-1, unmute and ask your question. Okay, let's go to Vincent. Vincent, unmute and ask your question.
The question I have.
Yes.
Actually, on the calculation of the opportunity cost.
Yes.
Basically, under the business.
Yes.
You've said that the other ones becomes positive, then upon reaching this of the business, then we have a negative.
Yes.
Yes, so which means it is about the opportunity cost minus the reward.
That's what I said. It is actually what I have said, this real opportunity cost, because of the divisibility nature of money. Money is divisible, isn't it?
Yes.
You will go to the shop with 10 bob, you want something worth 8 bob, you will be given 2 bob back, isn't it?
Yes.
So money has that advantage. And it actually gives us a convenience in terms of calculating the real opportunity cost. Kama ingekuwa vitu vingine, kama ingekuwa barter trade, vitu za barter, this one will not have been relevant. What I've done here, either you can minus this by this, or you can do it the other way around. Isn't it?
Okay.
So you see, the beauty is that it will give you different signage, but for the optimal choice or the best choice, it will give you a sign different from the other ones. Yes, and that's actually what I mean by this, because I will have chosen to do it like 2.2 minus 2.7, this one will have been negative. This one will have been negative, this one will be negative, and then this one will have been positive. isn't it?
Yes.
But since I
Yes.
did it the other way around, subtracting opportunity cost and the reward, this one is positive, this one is positive, this one is positive, but this one is negative.
Yes.
And because it has a different signage, that's also an indicator that that's the best choice, mostly.
Okay.
Inakuja tu out
Okay.
of my
Thank
many years of doing these sums.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Vincent, thank you very much. Do we have any other question? Something in chat? No. So I think, yeah. So that is that. So let me just introduce the last thing, and then in the next 5 or 10 minutes, we can call it a day. I have not even had my breakfast today, so you can imagine how famished I am. Economics, we use a lot of graphs, especially at this elemental level. So Zoea, walisema Zoea president, mimi naweza waambia zoeni kuchora magraphs. And the first one that I wish, or it's my honor to introduce, is one that will help us next week to better appreciate this concept of opportunity cost, what we call the production possibility frontier. And that's how it looks. It's basically a frontier that imagines a very simple economics, not really economics, but economy, sorry. And why are we calling it simple? It is simple because it is basically an economy that will have made the decision to dedicate all its resources, all its technology or know-how towards the production of only 2 goods. Okay. In most cases, hata ukienda kwa vitabu, I don't know why, for some reason, these are the 2 goods that they use, but they can be anything, clothes and butter. So this is the PPF here, that curve, production possibility frontier, or some books shall find it being referred to as production possibility curve. A graph showing all the combinations of goods and services that can be produced from a fixed amount of resources and a fixed technology. Because when you talk about existing technology, because we have not innovated, it becomes fixed to that extent. Okay. So it's basically a graph that will basically be showing the amounts or the combinations of the 2 goods, clothes and butter, that the economy will have decided to produce. So an economic decision comes in this sense. Do we produce at A? Do we produce at B? Do we produce at C? Do we produce at D? Do we produce at E? Do we produce at F? And do we produce at D? And is it even possible to produce in these 7 areas? Okay. Right? So from our knowledge of Cartesian plane, we'll know what A will imply. A will basically imply that the economists in this economy will have decided that let's dedicate all the resources to produce, say, something just above 2,000 units of clothes and no butter. BE will be the other extreme, whereby the economy will have decided that let's dedicate all the resources and the existing technology in order to produce maybe something just north of 1,500 units of butter and no clothes. Okay. BCD will basically be a decision that will have been made by economy or planners in the economy that let's produce at least some combination of the 2. In the case of B, 2,000 clothes 500 units of butter. The case of D, 500 units of cloth, 1,500 units of butter. C, 1,500 units of cloth and 1,000 units of butter, and so forth and so forth. One thing to note is that production on the frontier, whether it's A, B, C, D, or E, or any point on the frontier, represent maximum production or optimization. Of production. Basically meaning production is proceeding in the most efficient manner possible given the resources available and the technology available. Which will basically have the implication that we have these points of F and G. So what does F mean? What does G mean? F basically will mean that because it's not on the frontier, because it's not on the curve, right? And you'll appreciate that. It's nowhere on the curve. It basically will mean that as much as we are able to produce this combination indicated by F, whatever it is, maybe 900 units of cloth and maybe say 300 units of butter, we are talking about production not being optimized. There is inefficiency in production. So that combination is possible, but having said that, it is proceeding in an inefficient manner. Let's consider the other point which is not on the curve, which is point G. Right, and with point G, sorry, as I said, I have to do this so that to remove the clutter. I don't know why Zoom has not really given a solution to this. I've been teaching this now 3 years, and it's a common complaint I've been having. I used to think it's a laptop that I used to have, and then when I bought another laptop, same issue. So I think it's a software issue, but we'll deal with it as best as we can. G, if we extrapolate it, we'll see maybe it is giving us something like maybe 900 units of clothes and say 1,200 units of butter. Okay, 1,900 units of clothes and 1,200 units of butter. Basically, what we are saying that because it's not on the curved, on the colored surface, whatever color that is, when I used to teach this in class, I think men used to tell me that color is it blue, and the women used to tell me that color is green. So I decided that no, I'll just be calling it that color. But I think the computer tells me or advises me that it's a color called magenta. So you can see that G is not on the magenta region, the shaded region. What this means is that basically the economy, with the resources that it has and the technology, it is simply not able to produce 900 units of cloth and 1,200 units of butter, for example. For it to be able to produce, the frontier will need to come out from where it is to maybe somewhere like there. And for this to happen, two things need to happen. There need to be increase in resources. Remember, we described PPF as a graph showing combinations of the two goods arising from the fact that the resources are fixed. So here it's a case whereby there is an increase in resources. Whenever there is a new mineral discovered, the way we discovered oil, although 12 years later, we have not heard what is happening there, right? Whenever we discovered, I think, some minerals in Mui Basin in Kitui, some minerals in costs. These are just examples of how this can happen conceptually. Or whenever there is an innovation in technology. The beauty of technology is that technology enables us to do things simply, in a simple way tomorrow than we are doing it today. So if you think about even mobile phones and their effects, ask some of us who lived a good part of our lives before without mobile phones, how convenient these mobile phones are. For you people, it is very easy for you to assume because all of your lives, literally, you've lived with these things. But for us, we see some small miracles happening. Okay, so if these things change, if resources change, if there's a innovation, which basically means a change in technology, that has the effect of resulting into a rightward shift in the PPF. And I think I'll pick it up here next week so that we can now see the use of production possibility frontier in the prosecution of the opportunity costs. Philip Kimani, why will you be against opportunity costs? I don't understand the question at all. How can you be against a reality? Can you, Philip Kimani is asking, can you be against the opportunity cost maybe due to preference? No, you know, and this is a problem with knowledge nowadays. There's a lot of, I don't know. Allow knowledge to be what it is. Now you can actually now reckon with it after being positivistic about it. Opportunity cost is opportunity cost. This is an established fact. Hundreds of years. People have been learning opportunity costs. So it's not something that you want to be against. It's just the same way that you can say you cannot be against gravity. At the moment, I'll jump up, and because I don't believe in gravity, I don't think it will harm me. Utaumia, my friend. I don't know whether I'm the one not understanding your question, but it's an interesting question. You've made my day, actually. You cannot be against that which is fact, that which has been taught. For you to be against it, you have to come up with a better concept than it, right? So you cannot be against it. I hope I'm getting the English right, but you cannot be against opportunity cost even due to preference. That you unasema ati sasa I'll ignore. Na wewe ukikuwa na shilingi 100 uende kwa tuck shop, you want to consume things more about 1,000 shillings. It will not be possible. You'll have to really live within that 100 shillings. Now you can only make choices, limited choices within what you have. And that's the opportunity cost sometimes. That's the reality. Just like gravity, as I say. You cannot. Umenifurahisha anyway. That one has made my day. Ambos Rambeka, the last question, and then you can call it a day. Unmute.
Okay, so my question was, you have said it's possible to move from the point, from the magenta area.
Yes.
To the point G and F.
Yes.
By the
but only if there's a change in resources. Remember we defined, and it's a good question you ask. We defined PPF. Let me just take you there. As production, as what? A graph, basically meaning that curve, showing all the combinations of goods and services, clothes and butter, that can be produced from the keyword is fixed amount of resources. So that fixed becomes a limiting factor, that this, whatever it's on this curve here, represents the highest amount or the highest combinations of the two goods that can be produced at that time, due to the fact that we are limited by the resources, which are fixed, by the technology, which has not changed, still the technology that was existing. Sawa sawa?
Yeah.
So I don't know whether I don't know whether I've clarified anything. So for it to change, it basically means that the resources have to change. And for it to change upwards, it has to be more resources. And also there need to be an innovation in technology, basically meaning that we are doing things in an easier way tomorrow than we are doing today. Sawa sawa. Sawa sawa Muturi. Is it Rambeka? Okay. Maybe no, you need to be having an Infinix, or you have these things. Ongea na your class reps. Infinix is asking, we request note for more references, please. I gave your class reps and I gave you these things yesterday, what I gave your class reps. Maybe you are the people who, nyinyi ndio watu ambao class rep anawaambia kujeni, alafu next week mnasema, oh, na zile vitu, mbona lecturer alisema na hujatupatia? No. These are the things that I gave your class reps yesterday. Last week, actually, not even yesterday. Course outline, resource book. These are the notes. Because actually, these are the collection of notes that I've developed for the last 13 years. Na hapo hata utapata hata maybe some of the questions that you would expect to come in an exam setting. Even these slide presentations, you have them. Okay. So you are sorted out. Sometimes I see these questions and I'm like, maybe this is the what? This is the first time you are coming. First group, we don't have the notes you have because I have a WhatsApp group with your class reps and I was sure to give them the link. So the person you should approach and humbly ask for the notes and the course outline and the slides presentation. As I said, I wasn't bluffing when I said all provided via WhatsApp platform. I provided them that I can even send you the screenshots right now if you want of the links that I provided to my Google Drive housing these resources. So I don't know, maybe you are, I want to believe you are one of these people who come for the first time, and because you don't know anything, you are not there when you are being told the lecturer has provided, you are accusing the class rep for saying that maybe he or she that will not be having. I'm still being asked the same question, same answer. You have these things as far as I'm concerned. Somebody calling himself 11 raise Runu LWIY, some very crazy thing. You have these notes. As far as I'm concerned, talk with the class rep, right? And that should apply to everybody. And I'm not answering that question anymore. So I'll be providing the links to the next classes within the next 1 hour. You guys have a good day.